Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to start by thanking everyone in attendance today and everyone who made this event possible. I would also be amiss not to thank the state of Qatar and Liechtenstein and everyone and every state that support the path of accountability in my home country, Syria. Since the very months of popular uprising for democracy, we are in Syrian Network for Human Rights diligently on releasing reports that tackle the crimes against humanity perpetrated by the Syrian regime in various patterns of violations. Releasing on November 23rd, 2011, the report by the Commission of Inquiry confirmed the Syrian regime implication. This entailed the implication of its allies given that they have provided support in accordance with the international law for the regime that committed crimes against humanity. To this day, those states have been supplying the Syrian regime with militias and weapons as they are partners in those crimes. On the other hand, the Syrian regime and its allies have been determined completely crushing and dominating the country since the very first months, knowing full well that this was the only way to avoid accountability, which was the reason why those states interfered directly by sending their forces who were also directly involved with the Syrian regime in committing hundreds of war crimes. The Syrian lands were completely taken, and over the Syrian people were silent. Even if the Syrian lands were completely taken and the Syrian people were silenced, the path of justice and accountability would go on, and stopping us is not something in your power. Our employee and volunteer at SNHR have been working tirelessly since 2011 as we collected hundreds of thousands of pieces of data, information, and we developed complex program. After 8 years of continued work, SNHR possesses a database contains names, pictures, and data for 250,000 of Syrian civilians that have been killed since the start of popular uprising. We also complete a database contain names of 95,000 Syrian citizens, 95,000 of Syrian citizens who were forcibly disappeared. We don't know whether they are alive or dead. In addition, we have database containing 14,000 names of Syrians who died due to torture, and also data on 830 medical facilities, 1,360 schools, 580 markets, and 221 incidents of chemical weapons, and other types of violation. Actually, my goal from narrating all of those to say that this is not estimation at all, but this is rather than of database supported by information, and supported by information and different types of testimony from the family direct primary source. There is actually debate that the accountability is only for the family and victims themselves, but I'm saying here that the accountability is for us as a human rights defender, for my colleague at COI and the IIIM, Human Rights Watch, Amnesty International, and many others who have worked on defending human rights in Syria, as well as the state who support the path of justice in Syria. As NHR, we go by motto, no justice without accountability, and if I might add no truth without accountability, no dignity without accountability, no transitional justice without accountability, and no democratic transition without accountability. My second and final point, as bear to the time, the Syrian community has been subjected to all of these violations, and large portion of these violations are documented in details with hundreds of thousands of pictures, videos. Accountability is not optional, but rather an inevitability for the Syrian people. It is the backbone of the democratic transition. In addition, the international law prohibits amnesty for perpetrators of serious crimes, such as crimes against humanity, genocide, and war crimes. International mechanisms should interfere to ensure level of accountability, as we have listening to many shameful initiatives asking Syrian people to accept a bare minimum standard of security and livelihood in exchange of impunity for the criminals. This insulting recipe will only bear the Syrian conflict to no end. The Syrian people will continue to be faithful to their demands for freedom, dignity, and democracy, using all forms of peaceful resistance. The Syrian regime and its allies' impunity, which was in large afforded by the Russian protection at Security Council through vetoing any resolution that aims to refer the case in Syria to the ICC, has incited the Syrian regime not only to keep perpetrating heinous crimes, but also to rise the scale and level of violence, and finally to do all that while bargaining about being able to do whatever they want to the Syrian people. The immunity has generated a negative reaction from the Syrian people and in the Middle East region, and it will encourage more sadistic individuals to copy the Syrian regime experience against their people. Finally, I have two recommendations that 8 long, severe years has passed, but all the pain and the crimes will not be forgotten. The past must be redressed by acknowledging the suffering of the victims and then archiving repression through accountability. The IIIM was an advanced exceptional step in this regard. We call on the states that support the IIIM and the path of accountability in Syria to move forward another step by establishing a special tribunal in Syria under a resolution by the UN General Assembly. Second, the states that have signed the Geneva Convention are obliged to fight crimes against humanity and war crime. As such, the state have universal jurisdiction, need to make more effort toward submitting cases in a wider scope. Thank you very much.